For those of you who don't know me, I'm Angela Gullo and I'm the Marketing and Communications Lead here at DiUS. Now, before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that we're meeting here today, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And we celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal people and their ongoing culture and connections to the lands and waters of Australia. So thank you everyone for coming along today. We're really proud to provide you with an overview of our machine learning report. It's been made up of feedback from over 205 who represent a wide range of Australian organisations, both large and small, from all sorts of different industries. Our speakers for today are Kirsty Miller, who's Head of Partnerships. So hi to Kirsty, she's on top of your screen there. So Kirsty will be providing an overview of our findings and the report itself. And we also have Mark Fowler, who's joined us today. He's our machine learning practice lead and client engagement principal. So Mark will be finishing off the call today with providing you with some steps and tips to help you, regardless of where you're at on your own machine learning journey. Unfortunately, Joe Lucino, our DiUS co-founder and director, to join us today. So he sends his apologies, and the three of us will do our best to fill in for him. So if we go to the next slide, we'll just cover off just a little bit of housekeeping. The main thing to be mindful of is that we're using Slido, which I'll put in the link in the, there we go, in the side there, and we're just running questions separately so that it doesn't distract the course. And you can also just add in questions throughout the session anonymously, or you can add your name and we'll go through them at the end of the call and answer any that you have. There's also the ability to set up captions, as you'll see there, by pressing the little dots at the bottom of the screen if you'd like to have some captions of the call as we go through. So if we just go to the next slide before we kick off, one final thing I wanted to do was to give you an overview of DiUS. If you haven't heard of DiUS before, I'll just give you a bit of a run through. So basically we're a team of about 150 people across Sydney and Melbourne, and we've been around since 2004. So the best way to describe what we do is that we figure out how to use emerging technology to help our clients. And we do this usually through what we call the 3Ds of digital, data and devices, and we help our clients solve difficult problems. So an example of emerging technology is, of course, machine learning, which is why we're here today. And we've been working with clients for several years now using machine learning. In fact, in 2019, DiUS was the first organisation in Australia to attain the AWS ML competency. So we've got a lot of experience from creating chatbots for NIB insurance to developing recommendation engines for an accommodation booking system to even using computer vision to analyse digital images for the mining industry. There's a lot there, but we're here today to find out about the report. So I will hand over to Kirsty, who will get started and take you through it. Thanks, Kirsty.
Thanks, Angela. Hi, as Angela said, my name's Kirsty Miller. I'm DiUS's Head of Partnerships, and in my role, I guess I do a lot of work on exploring the new and helping, what that means for clients. So it was my pleasure to be involved in DiUS's inaugural machine learning survey of the Australian market. So the first thing we wanted to talk about is, why are we doing a survey? DiUS is already doing work with machine learning, and we see a lot of activity in the market. And I guess really one of the things that we noticed was we're really seeing a lot of organizations struggle with machine learning, and there's a lot of appetite out there for a broad set of, information to help organizations move. With a broader market view. So we decided to go out and do a survey. We did it late last beginning of first couple of months, and as Angela said, we're really interested in particularly focusing what's happening in Australia, because machine learning is something that gets so much airspace everywhere you go, and but we really want to focus on what's happening in the Australian market. So wanted to lead off with some of our key findings. So we came up with, I think, 8 or so key findings, which are, for us, I guess, the most interesting and useful things from the report. And firstly, all around the strong interest that we've seen within organisations in Australia. I think this was actually a bit of a surprise for us. We knew that there's a lot of hype around machine learning, but to find out that there's actually 8 in 10 organisations that are interested and have started their ML journey. Only 21% have an ML product or project or feature in production. Second key finding was also very, very encouraging. We hear a lot of times around, the high failure rate of machine learning projects and them not delivering on results. And we found that machine learning projects are definitely delivering business value. Of those people who reported machine learning models in production, that 21%, the overwhelming majority of them report successful business outcomes. So those that are doing machine learning well and are succeeding are actually getting business value from their investment in this new technology, which is really encouraging to see. And we also found that this strong interest is only going to accelerate. I think probably everybody knows the potential of machine learning technology and how it can radically change things. So this was definitely borne out in the survey. So, of the total sample, overwhelmingly 86 people said, definitely it's important to them going forward. And of those people who hadn't started with machine learning, they plan to do so soon. So that's, definitely we feel like we're going to see that acceleration even faster and further in the market. However, I guess one of the things we wanted to ask ourselves was, what's stopping people from adopting machine learning? What are some of the challenges? And we found that, definitely, as we were expected, it's data. You can't talk about machine learning with data. And really, one of the key findings is that you need to invest in your data, because the survey showed that data-related challenges are either the top or second most commonly reported challenges once you've started your machine learning journey. So we really can't, underemphasize the importance of investing in your data. And then we also found, it's very interesting to see where, where in the business is ML being used and driving value. And we found that the top machine learning use cases are internally focused. So the top 2 business areas are operational efficiency, which I think will probably come as no surprise to anyone, and business decision making. However, in the future, because we also ask people, what do they plan to do in the future? The business areas, it's still operational efficiency, but you can see customer experience, a more external focus, becoming the second most popular. And of course, we can't talk about machine learning without talking about, the skills shortage. Everybody sees this everywhere. I mean, we've got an overall tech skills shortage in Australia everywhere right now. But machine learning, data science, and artificial intelligence, and I guess also data architecture and data engineering, all of those things, we hear a lot about how there aren't enough skills. And definitely, I think that's something that was borne out by the report. Only 70% of organizations who are doing it well are reporting that they have sufficient machine learning capability. So even people that are doing it well say that they don't have enough, right? So I think that, would lead us to provide yet another data point that definitely there's a skills shortage in this area. One positive thing we did find was, really a way forward for organizations that are wanting to do more with machine learning is, make it a priority, make a plan, and, give it that attention and focus and investment. The survey data showed that, 79% of respondents achieving success with machine learning have a strategy. So there's a bit of a strong alignment there, and it's definitely something that we would recommend organizations think of when they're looking to move their machine learning journey forward. And lastly, this is a bit of, I guess, a funny one. I guess, it really is horses for courses in machine learning. We really struggled. We were really hoping to find, one area or one industry or one kind of business area that was doing so much better than the others. So we could say, there'd been a significant movement forward. But I think what we found was the data showed that really activity is happening across so many fronts all over the place, and businesses are looking for how to apply machine learning to solve their particular business problem. And they all different, all these different dimensions show very broad distribution. And I'll unpack that a little bit more as we go through the data. But really, I think that it shows there is no silver bullet. There is no one strategy or one application that's going to make a difference. It's all about finding solving the right problem in the right way using machine learning. So I'll move into a little bit more about the data. So one of the things that we wanted to ask ourselves was just how many organizations are adopting machine learning, because you hear various figures. And what we found, again, that we said, we have these percentage of respondents that have embarked on a machine learning journey. So that's 8 in 10. However, we categorize the machine learning journey into 4 stages. So you have people who have not started, and that was 18%. You have people who are considering, which means they're starting to think about what business problems they might apply machine learning to, and how to prioritize them, and how to find the right place to apply it. Then you move on to people that are actually hands-on, that are actually experimenting with machine learning. So they're building POCs or running pilots using machine learning technologies. And then you have the last group, which we called applying, because those are the ones that have 1 or more models in production. So really, if we ask ourselves how many are adopting the technology, it is 54% that are the adopters. But again, a reminder that only 21% are putting models into production. And this is a result for Australia, and I guess we wanted to compare it to what's happening globally. Is Australia ahead, behind? When you look at other adoption rates, and we found that our results were actually very similar to other studies that are around there that give Australian results. One by Kaggle in particular. It is around just over 50%, and around 50% is actually about the global average. So it was interesting to do that comparison. Another thing we asked ourselves, so the key finding was that having a machine learning strategy has a close relationship with success in machine learning success. So we looked at the machine learning journey stage versus the strategy and capability within an organization. We asked them where they were at. And if you look at this graph here, I guess really the key takeaway is you can see the aqua, which shows the percentage of organizations or percentage of respondents that has a machine learning strategy is trending upwards. So obviously that was where our key finding came from there. But interestingly, you can also see that sufficient machine learning capability is also trending upwards. So, as an organization gets more mature, they're more likely to have machine learning capability, they're more likely to have a machine learning strategy, and they're more likely to have given, that focus and investment, which is why we really suggest that, having a plan, having some focused investment is a really good way to embark upon your journey. Definitely, I know that the government released their AI plan, I think last week, and I know that a lot of how it was received, it was a very welcome reception in the market, because it did actually set out plans for investment and and plans for time frame and plans for investing resources, and that's a really positive result. So we also asked ourselves, how is business using machine learning? And I've already pointed out that operational efficiency and business decision making were the two top areas. But you can see here what I was referring to when we talked about horses for courses. It's a very broad spread. There's really not that much difference between operational efficiency and sales and marketing at 34%. And again, this underlines this broad range of investment that's being made across the range, where people are really seeking out the right problem and the right approach to deliver business value. And we also asked people, again, what were their plans in the future? How are they planning to use it? And you can see the figures are slightly higher. But again, operational efficiency is at the top, and you can see customer experience second. And you can see here there's slightly more, range. But again, the distribution is very broad, suggesting, investment across all areas still. We also wanted to understand if there was any relationship between industry or organizational size. I think that's quite a useful thing to explore. Very unfortunately, we couldn't find any relationship between industry. The sample size that we had, I guess it was very advantageous from one perspective that we had this really broad spread of industries. So we had great representation in all the cohorts. But at the end of the day, the analysis just didn't reveal one industry doing disproportionately more than others. Now, that may have been a factor of our sample, because I guess, our feeling was that we expected there to be, particularly organizations that are, already working in the software business, or ones that are working with huge amounts of data. We expected them to, feature more strongly or more maturely, but that did not turn out to be the case. However, what we did find was there was a relationship between, how many people were applying machine learning and organizational size. So here, this chart represents the 4 stages of the machine learning journey, and organization size by the number of employees. And you can see that, quite clearly, when you're in the smaller group, the 1 to 20, the applying is, 6%. And then when you go down to, greater than 5,000, you're up to 45%. So that's really quite a strong relationship, except for one outlier. I guess really you can see the 500 to 1,000 group cohort there, and 64% of that cohort seems to be stuck in POC purgatory. We did a lot of analysis to figure out why that might be the case. What was behind organizations not, translating POCs into production. And really there weren't any clear differentiating factors. We did wonder if sample size might be to do with it, but all the cohorts are pretty evenly sized, so that wasn't it. And we explored a whole bunch of other factors. The only thing we could really point to here was because this cohort did report, as compared to the other cohorts, slightly higher percentages of the challenges that they're experiencing stopping them from moving forward with machine learning adoption. So it may be that this group, for some reason, is having, the challenges they're experiencing stopping them moving forward. And I guess also the last thing to point out here is, there's such a big difference between 1 to 20 and 5,000 employees. And it's quite tempting to say, well, small organizations don't have the resources, they don't have the, investment to make into this. So obviously, larger organizations do, and that's the reason behind this. But We work a lot with startups, which I think typify the 1 to 20 types of organizations. And, our experience is that small organizations do machine learning, but if you're a startup in particular, you're not going to be focused on machine learning unless it's part of your core product offering. You're going to be so focused on product market fit that you're not going to, it's going to be a nice to thing, as something to have for later. So the small percentage doesn't necessarily indicate, I guess, a lack of resources or a lack of desire or a lack of interest. It may just be connected to where they are in their organizational or product market fit cycle. So moving on, we asked ourselves, another thing that's really important, and we get asked this question all the time, organizations always want to know when we're talking to them about how to solve business problems, like, what is everyone else doing? How are people adopting machine learning? Has this been done before? So we asked our survey cohort, how is machine learning being adopted? And we asked, what are the most popular application areas we're seeing? So you can see the 5 areas we surveyed people on here. And you can see, again, this really broad distribution. There's not that much difference between recommendation systems, which drive things like personalization, and conversational interfaces, which, drive things like voice and chat and all of those things that we're used to now that help us, help organizations improve customer service. We did expect computer vision to be slightly higher because we do a lot with computer vision. But again, there's not enough difference for us to make any real, I guess, observations about one being higher than the other. And I guess also too, recommendation systems and tabular structured data, they're very, I guess, well-established areas. So them being slightly at the top is not much of a surprise to us. Again, we asked people, what are their plans to do in the future? How is this going to change? And you can see NLP, natural language processing, rocketing to the top. That's definitely not unexpected. Particularly given, all of the, I guess, advancements being made in this area. And then also, obviously the recent release of GPT-3 in this area, which we feel is going to speed people wanting to use this as part of their solution. We also asked people, are you using machine learning services, like the ones that have been increasingly released over the last couple of years by the cloud vendors? Or are you building your own custom bespoke models? And you can see there that overwhelmingly custom and services, a combination, is the most popular. Again, this is not an unexpected result. To see machine learning services only at 8%, I think that speaks to the newness of them. They're becoming more and more mature, and they're a great way for starting because they solve one thing really, really, really well. But as people get more mature with machine learning, they want to kind of build around it and more completely solve the business problem. And that's where a combination of custom and machine learning services comes into play. And then another thing we really wanted to dig in is what are the challenges? What's stopping people from machine learning adoption? And the biggest barriers differ quite a lot by what stage you're at. And I think that's a very expected result because you're not going to be concerned at the same thing when you're starting out as when you're very mature. So when you've not started and when you're considering, so not started, haven't done anything, considering again is you're trying to figure out what problems would be best for you to solve with machine learning, what kind of pain points have you got that you could apply machine learning to drive some business value. The number one on both of them is you have more important priorities. Again, this links back to, I guess the idea that, you need to be making it a priority to make any traction. And I guess with the considering, the interesting thing is you're seeing data, start to emerge as the second most important barrier, or second most frequently reported barrier. When you're experimenting, this is where you're feeling your lack of knowledge and skills. I guess, as you know, that's very understandable as you're trying to build things. And then, data related again here rears its head. And then when you get to applying, data related is the top challenge. And as you would expect, there are ongoing challenges around application integration and the ongoing scaling and performance of your models, checking for drift, that kind of thing. Now, because data is such an important part of machine learning, you can't talk with one without the other. We wanted to ask people specifically what data challenges are they experiencing. Again, we asked them according to which stage they were at. And for considering, you can see here, they're not even thinking about data, and maybe they should be. They're not even thinking about labeling data and data strategy, how they're collecting the data, something that Mark will talk a little bit about. But you can see here, it's about the access of the data. Where is the data? Where is it being held? And you can also see regulatory or data privacy concerns are up there. As people, obviously consumer data rights are a, very big consideration when you're doing machine learning. And you can see here, obviously when people are picking the problems, this is top of mind for them. What is the impact going to be to the consumer? Get to the experimenting stage, and you can see people starting to, having more sophisticated concerns around where is the data coming from, the access and management. And again, you can see it's, people are still thinking about the ethics and consumer data privacy concerns. And then applying, it's all about, when you're putting a model into production, you're all about, actually accessing the data. And, probably we would say that this is linked to a pipeline issue, because obviously you will need a steady stream of data, steady stream of clear, identified, labeled data. But again, you can see that regulatory or data privacy concerns are still here. And I guess, it's interesting to note that is top of mind and behind the data related challenges all the way through the machine learning journey. So, we talked briefly about the skills shortage, and we talked about the fact that, even some mature organizations have skills gaps. Well, if we look at the data overall, most organizations have some machine learning capability. So about 82% have some, but only 39% overall what they consider be sufficient. So I think definitely this is another data point to add to the fact that, definitely Australia has a skills shortage in the machine learning area. And we also asked our survey respondents. So we wanted to ask, with all the challenges, because everyone reported challenges, and I think probably, something to highlight from those previous slides is, again, the broad distribution across the different challenges. It's very interesting to note that everybody who filled out the survey and reported data-related challenges and reported challenges in general had more than one. There wasn't just one thing stopping them. There was definitely, I think, usually about 3 or 4 that were I guess impacting their machine learning journey. And we wanted to know what is the impact of that? Is it stopping them? Is it slowing them? And encouragingly, I think one of the really nice positive outcomes from the survey was that despite all of the challenges that were being faced, machine learning adoption is being slowed. So you can see 86% of people said it's being slowed. So it's not being stopped, it's being slowed. So The challenges themselves, despite the complexity and the number of them, they're not insurmountable. And I think that's a really positive takeaway from the survey overall. And now I'm going to hand over to Mark, and we're actually going to switch screens, and Mark's going to take you through the next part.
Thanks, Kirsty. I'm just going to share my screen, so bear with me for a moment as I do that. And let me know when you can see that. Oops.
Yep, all good, Mark. And everyone, don't forget the link on the side there if you want to ask any questions that Mark or Kirsty can answer at the end.
Thanks, Angela, and thanks, Kirsty. It really is encouraging to see that despite those many challenges, Kirsty, organisations are still persevering, discovering what works for them, and ultimately realising the business benefits. Hi, my name is Mark Fower. I'm a client engagement principal at DiUS, and I also manage the machine learning practice here. And in my role, I get a chance to learn a lot about this space. I work with many clever people, and I'm fortunate enough to speak to many customers about their machine learning ideas. In this section, we combine what we've learned from the survey with our experience working with our customers and also building our own machine learning powered products. We've come up with some considerations and tips that may help you along with your journey. Of course, as Kirsty said, every organisation is different. So their business challenges might be very unique. So some may apply to you and some might actually apply in different stages of your journey. Now, firstly, for organisations that haven't started experimenting, the survey showed us that these organisations generally reported that they had other more important business priorities, or they hadn't identified a problem to be solved. We often find that organisations at this stage might not be aware of what machine learning is and what it's capable of. So we do suggest organisations invest in educating themselves, and there's plenty of resources out there. And often it's also useful to remind ourselves that we interact with AI systems almost on a daily basis, and sometimes we're not even aware of it. So when we're unlocking our phones with Face ID, when we're browsing through our photos on our phones, some of those clever features are powered by computer vision. Machine learning is also behind Google Maps when we are getting, I guess, driving directions and ETAs, when we're browsing through content on Netflix, YouTube, shopping on Amazon, booking accommodation, or looking at our social media feeds. What you see is often determined by recommendation systems that are personalising that experience for you. So these businesses and product companies are using machine learning to create value for you as their customer. And in doing so, they are either increasing your attention on their website or product. They may have made your purchase decision easier, and you might have increased your spend. But in any case, it's been designed to address a need and achieve some business goal. And when we realise that we're interacting with AI almost on a daily basis, and some of our best experiences are enabled by machine learning, you might ask yourself, how might that help your business? How might you create value for your own customers and achieve your own business goals? Now, in terms of where to focus, we often recommend organisations look at their user journeys and touch points, identify pain points and opportunities within your organisation, whether that be for your internal staff or for your customers. And like any technology initiative, machine learning ideas really should start with a known business problem to address and provide something for your teams to really rally around. And from those opportunities, only some of them are actually suitable for machine learning. Some don't require the sophistication of machine learning. In many cases, they can be solved by a small process change or by applying some automation around some simple rules. And lastly, to ensure buy-in from executives and the appropriate stakeholders is critical. Having the right support, appropriate attention, and allocation of budget, people and resources will give you the best chance of success. We've seen many experiments run by passionate technology teams proving that machine learning does work, but without the right level of support and backing, they often fail to proceed beyond the POCs. And this is often due to competing priorities, as again we saw in the survey, failure to engage at the right level, or perhaps they focused on the wrong problem to solve in the first place. Now for some additional tips, beyond the inspiration, I guess, from our everyday interactions with AI and machine learning, tapping into cloud vendors such as AWS and Google is also a great place to get started. They've done a lot of the heavy lifting for you and as Kirsty mentioned earlier, have built many ready-to-use services that address common use cases. And these typically require very little knowledge about the underlying models behind that. Cloud vendors are also a very rich source of information, training programs and workshops, and coupled with the API-driven, I guess, services, it makes it really easy for you to get your hands dirty and get started. The second tip, look internally for opportunities for quick wins. As we saw in the survey, a large proportion of problems were internally focused. Machine learning can help improve the efficiency of day-to-day operations by helping your staff perform tasks either more quickly, consistently, or even better. Tasks that are either error-prone or repetitive or require some level of decision support can be good candidates for augmentation. Often we see machine learning used to automate some simple tasks, so staff can spend more time on more complex or high-value activities. And we often see machine learning used to triage as well, whether that be tasks or cases. So staff can focus on more urgent cases if time is a factor, or cases that require greater human judgment or further investigation. The last tip here is to really look within your organisation to understand what internal capability you might already have. Even though you might not have already started, you may have some people within your organisation with important skills, knowledge, and the foundations that can be tapped into when you're ready. It's important to note that success with machine learning is more than just specialist data scientists and machine learning engineers. Domain experts, designers, data engineers, cloud and software engineers can play a very important part throughout the entire journey and through various stages as well. And we've also noticed that, at least from our perspective, devs be curious folks. So we find that many of our devs are already tinkering with machine learning on many hobby projects alone as well. So tap into that and you might have some more capability than you realise. Now, for organisations that are ready to start experimenting, it's really important to pick the right problems to solve. As we mentioned earlier, not all problems are appropriate for machine learning. And if you've identified multiple problems, prioritise those problems based on what business value they might deliver versus the complexity and the effort to deliver them. This can help you get a sense of which ones are best to pursue and which order. And that can help you develop a bit of initial roadmap and strategy and create a business case for investment. Now, for those ready to start experimenting, some additional tips. If it is your first foray into machine learning, it's often suggested that you don't focus on the most complex problem to solve, irrespective of whether you feel that that idea will deliver great potential gains. Instead, pick a problem that still addresses a concrete pain point, but is achievable. This will allow you to I guess, achieve a quick win, provide some learnings and the momentum to continue. Design thinking is also another technique that can help us identify the most promising machine learning ideas. And when we think about innovation, the most promising ideas that are likely to succeed are the ones that stand up to some of those questions around desirability, feasibility, and viability. And the same applies for machine learning initiatives as well. We often start with desirability. So what we're asking here is essentially, is that pain point or opportunity a real problem for your customers or your internal staff, and does it create value for them? And when you're ready to build out that feature, is it usable and is it appealing? Does it fit neatly into their existing workflow or experience? Are there any ethical or privacy concerns that you should be aware of that might derail your idea? Or are there any other reasons that might cause your customers either not to trust your model or your product? And then we look at also I guess from a technical side of things, the feasibility aspect of it. And this is where often machine learning POCs or experiments start. And we're considering here whether models and data exist to help you solve your problem. So these can be machine learning as a service or custom models that can be retrained for your specific problem. And if you are going down that route of retraining models or training models, do you have the appropriate data? Is it labelled? Do you have sufficient volume? Is it appropriate data? Is it accessible and recent? Historical data that may be collected for historical data can be collected for different reasons and during different conditions. So they might actually apply to today's climate. And we see a lot of this with the pandemic over the last 12 to 18 months as well. It's also worth considering whether there are any other potential barriers to building, integrating or deploying your model within your systems of applications. It's really worth thinking about that path to production early on because there may be some barriers or dependencies that are difficult to overcome without the appropriate awareness and planning ahead. And lastly, viability. So this is the commercial lens, and what we're asking here is whether the solution can achieve the desired business outcome and return on investment. So will it deliver the efficiency gains, the cost savings, increased revenue or market share? And do those gains outweigh the cost of building, running and maintaining the solutions now and into the future? Asking questions across multiple lenses really helps us assess and identify the best ideas to proceed with. And it can really also help us design our experiments, which takes us to the next point. Experiments are generally designed to manage risk and validate our assumptions, and this extends, or should extend, beyond just technical risk or feasibility. User research and experiments can be conducted to address some of those desirability questions that we asked or mentioned earlier, and you can run these early on in parallel with some of your tech investigations as well. Many organisations that we talk to are sometimes hesitant to get started because they feel they have very little data to get started with. And yes, you know, often it is better to have more data. However, you can get started with a relatively small data set. Firstly, if you're using machine learning as a service, models are already pre-trained, so you don't need your own data for training. But if you do need to go down the path of training models, there are some models that require very few or very little data to get some reasonable results. And there are also other ways to expand your data set through data augmentation techniques. This is quite common in the computer vision problems that we solve. By cropping, flipping, rotating images, you can really increase the size of your training set and produce good results. Data challenges, as we saw in the report, can be a massive obstacle, but it could also be seen as an opportunity. By getting started and getting your hands dirty, you really get a chance to see the real quality of the data you have in your organisation for the purpose of machine learning. And this can really help you inform or reinforce your data strategy. On quite a number of occasions when we've run POCs with organisations, the result of the POC it could result in changing their data collection approach, whether that be the type of data or the sampling rates. And by doing so, they can revisit the POC at the later stage and improve the chance of success in future. The other thing that's worth mentioning as well is the sooner that you do release or pilot your solution, the sooner you're actually capturing new data. And of course, validating the success of your product or your models. But that new data is actually increasing your data set, and you get the opportunity to retrain and improve your model as well. Lastly, showcase and showcase often. Showcases are a great way to demonstrate progress, share your challenges and your learnings, get feedback, and this also applies to machine learning initiatives, even in the early stages of experimentation. We find that showcases can really increase visibility of what you're working on, spark some interest, increase buy-in and further support for your initiative. Now, for those of you who are moving from POC to production, the effort required may be quite significant, and there are many more considerations that can add to the complexity of doing this. One of our machine learning specialists actually did a lunch and learn on this particular topic in the past, which some of you may have seen. We'll share the link for those who haven't. It was quite a deep dive, so I'll just be touching on some of the high-level considerations here. Firstly, does the model need to be rewritten? Often when we're moving from POC to production, models will need to be rewritten in appropriate language and with the rigor for production and scale. How will your model be integrated into an application or feature? And how can we ensure that there is a great user experience with that feature or product? And we touched on some of that with when we looked at the desirability considerations. In some circumstances, does your solution require human intervention? There may be a confidence threshold where you may need someone to review before a decision or an action is made. Again, what automated infrastructure deployment and data pipelines might be required to support and support your model and your solution, and what framework might you need in place to monitor, retrain, and improve your model to ensure that it continues to perform well in the real world context and as things change as well. Again, there's lots of tools out there, both open source and from cloud providers that can help you manage the entire life cycle. Now, in terms of some final tips, form cross-functional teams if you haven't done so earlier. As with any technology initiative, we always favour forming teams with a combination of technical, business and experience design expertise to maintain that design thinking approach as you build and evolve the product. In our experience, when our machine learning engineers are embedded in product teams and collaborating, it often results in much better outcomes. There's one thing to recognise the need, and there's another thing to make the feature or the experience usable and appealing. So experience design is essential, as it is with other digital products, but even more so with machine learning powered applications. Introducing machine learning may, neatly augment the experience for users, and equally it can actually drastically change that user interaction. So customer perception and need should be at the forefront of design throughout your entire journey. And lastly, experimentation shouldn't end once you've launched your product or feature. Equip your teams with the ability to iterate and experiment, and a lot of this can be around tooling, so they can continue to look for opportunities to improve the models and the overall product experience. And this could even mean replacing your model, adding new models in a series of, or a chain to improve the overall results. The field is really advancing rapidly. New tools are constantly being made available. Cloud vendors are always adding new exciting products and features. So it's worth staying across the latest and investigating how might that enhance your product. And of course, if you are achieving success in one area, there's always opportunity. There's an opportunity to start experimenting in others. Now, this is the end of our prepared material. We do have some time for questions, so back to you, Ange.
Yes, thanks, Mark. Thanks, Kirsty. Yeah, so we've had some questions pop through on Slido. I'll just put the link through again if you do have any questions. We've had some come through, so I'll just read them out now. So the first one that came through is, what do you do if you have many potential problems that can be solved with ML? What do you do if you've got lots of problems to solve?
Angela, I think we touched on that a little bit earlier. It really is a good idea to map that usually in an axis, when you're looking at the business benefits it might deliver versus the complexity. That gives you a nice little visual on which ones are worth pursuing. So, and again, if you take that approach, it's not to rule out some of your ideas, but it really gives you a good idea of which ones are worth investing in now, especially when you're starting. And we do that, not just with machine learning, but with other features and ideas as well.
Okay, a good point, Mark. Thank you. Well, then the next question is, is there anything in the survey results that really surprised you? And I think this might be a good one for you both to answer, Kirsty and Max. I know you've both spent a lot of time going through all the survey results. So was there anything that, that you weren't expecting that surprised you out of the results that came through? Do you want to go first, Kirsty?
Yeah, I'll go first. So for me, I think it was really that business value point. So that 20% of 21% in production, that wasn't a surprise. The strong interest, I think we felt that we would see based on all the conversations we have all the time in the market. But the fact that the 81% report business value of those ones that have got results in production. We hear all the time about this really high rate of failure, of projects. They'll start and they don't get into production and they don't, realize any value. And I think that was, for me, that was nicely surprising. It was really encouraging, and I guess didn't expect that. So for me, that was the one thing, I think. Yeah.
I think from my perspective, Angela, for the most part, it was in line with our expectations, what we're hearing from our customers. Kirsty touched on many of these things earlier, but one of the things was really, again, it was really encouraging to see that organisations were still pressing ahead. Only about 5%, I think it was, Kirsty, you mentioned that.
Yeah, that's right.
That actually stopped their machine learning initiative due to those challenges that they had faced. So that was a really pleasant surprise for me. The other one that was a surprise, and I'm not sure whether it really should have been a surprise, was that 50%, roughly, you said, that of respondents were hands-on, were using a combination of custom and machine learning models. Machine learning as a service models. So that really indicates that the market is maturing.
That's true.
And learning, growing, and understanding when to use the right tools for the right problems, and potentially actually enhancing and further incrementally improving their overall solution.
Yeah.
That's good. Thank you, Mark. Thanks, Kirsty. We haven't got any other questions in Slido. I mean, anyone feel free to jump in. You don't have to go through Slido. You can just jump in on the call. Or use the chat here. We did have someone make a comment, sort of a comment, I guess, which we could turn into a question. Andrew Atkin made a comment in the meeting chat that he said, to gain executive buy-in and investment, in many cases, we need to articulate how ML will solve business problems. I find vendors cannot answer this. So I guess we could turn that into a question, couldn't we? I suspect it's a hard one to answer because it's obviously dependent on so many variables. But do you have any thoughts on that, Kirsty, Mark?
I'll start, and then Mark can embroider. I mean, I think that actually is the challenge. And you shouldn't be making any investment in technology unless you've got a business case, unless you know what value it's going to deliver, and exactly how you're going to measure it. Yes, if someone comes to you directly and asks, how are you going to solve this problem and what will it deliver? Of course, you can't answer that cold. It does require some investigation. I don't think Andrew's on the call anymore, which is, of course, fine. And I don't mean to put him on the spot, but, definitely when someone comes to you with a particular problem, you can't answer it cold saying, yes, you're going to get 10% on this, or it's going to deliver this. That's the part of the magic and part of the work where you go through and you figure out and make sure you shape what it is you're going to investigate or what solution you're going to do so that it is going to solve the problem, and you work out what those metrics are.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I guess from my perspective, it's understanding that some problems are already solved before. So it really depends on what we're looking at here versus some are more, I guess, leading edge or less common. And it's all about being transparent and honest about what you're investigating and experimenting then often that's what gives you the competitive advantage as well. That unique opportunity, and if it's been solvable before, then typically it's not going to give you that competitive advantage. So there's always going to be risk, and I think from our perspective, we're often very honest about what it's going to take. As we equip our teams with the right resources to help them explore, research, and continue to explore. I think for the most part, that's what we're talking about here when we talk about experimentation and when we talk about emerging technology. It's honesty about what we know and what we don't know and how we go about it. And I want to unpack his question a little bit more. Is it a question of how? Is it a question about explainability? What is it that your, I guess, executives or decision makers need to know? And there's obviously, depending on those questions, there's answers that you can point to in terms of what other people might be doing as well.
Yeah, and just to layer on top of that, I think also too, when you talk about experimentation as the start of, as the start of your journey, it's very important that people understand that a proof of concept is not the same as a tech spike. Spiking something to see if it works is not the same as doing a proper proof of concept that looks at something from those 3 different lenses that Mark went through. Tech spikes are extremely valuable and they're extremely useful, and they have a great importance and in your overall experimentation and figuring out what works and learning the tools and learning the infrastructure. But a spike is not the same as a proof of concept that is driving towards a business outcome, and you understanding if what you want is going to deliver the desired business or customer impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good points. Good point. Well, we've only got 1 minute left, so I think if we just flick over, Mark, to the last slide, I think there's a link there to download the report if you haven't already. We'll send a note this afternoon with the recording of today's session, as well as that link, not only to download the report, but it's also on a landing page that includes a lot of other blogs and webinars we've done in the past. There's a lot of different resources there that expand upon everything that was discussed today. So thank you everyone for joining us, and do reach out if you need any more information. We're happy to help. So thank you, Mark, thank you, Kirsty, and enjoy the afternoon and enjoy your weekend. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Angela.